Hi, this is Mrs. Wiederholt, and I just want to welcome you to this lesson on solving a system of equations by elimination. Now let's get started. There are several steps or things that you need to remember when using the elimination method to solve a system of equations. One thing you need to understand is the goal of elimination is to eliminate one of the variables so that you can solve for the other one. Another thing to know is that some systems can be solved simply by adding the two equations together because they have opposite coefficients. Now, if opposite coefficients don't exist, then one or both equations must first be multiplied by a number to create opposite coefficients. Then you can add the equations. After you have solved for one variable, then you can substitute the found variable into an equation to solve for the other variable. Now let's do our first example. Here we have two equations. The first one is 3x plus 5y equals 0, and the second one is 2x minus 5y equals negative 25. Now because in each equation I have a 5y, and one of them is positive and one of them is negative, I simply can add these two equations together to eliminate the y value. So it will look like this. Since I want to add these two together, I'm just going to put a plus sign in front. And that way I know that I'm adding. So here we go. I have 3x plus 2x, which would equal 5x. Because 5y plus negative 5y equals 0, I don't need to show that. So now I'm going to move to the other side of the equal sign where I have 0 plus negative 25. And so that's going to be 0 minus 25 is negative 25. Now I have an equation with one variable, and so I can now solve for x. And I will do that by dividing each side by 5. So x is equal to negative 5. Now all we have to do is substitute this negative 5 for an x value in either one of the equations so that we can solve for y. I'm going to pick the first one. You don't have to. I could pick the second equation, but I'm going to pick the first one. So I have 3 times negative 5, instead of 3 times x, it's 3 times negative 5, plus 5y equals 0. So 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, plus 5y equals 0. Now I'm going to add 15 to both sides, and that gives me 5y is equal to 15. Now all I have to do is divide each of the terms by 5. And so let me rewrite that right here. I have the 5y equals 15. And now I'm going to divide each side by 5 so that y equals 3. Now I want to check my work. And I'm going to do that by plugging in the 3 for a y value, the negative 5 for an x value, and I'm going to do it in this second equation, the one I did not use the first time. So that's going to be 2, and instead of x, it's 2 times negative 5, minus 5, and instead of y, it's going to be times 3, and that's going to equal negative 25. At least I sure hope it does. Okay, so 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. And does that equal negative 25? It sure does. Negative 10 minus 15 is negative 25. So now that I know my answers check, I'm going to write it as an ordered pair. So here I go. I have x equals negative 5, and my y is 3. And so there's my answer. Now let's do another example. Now in this example, the first thing I'm looking for is, do I have two variables that have the same coefficient but with opposite signs? And when I look at the x's, no, they don't. And when I look at the y's, they don't either. So that means I'm going to have to multiply one of these equations by a number so that I can get a coefficient to either be -9 or +4. It doesn't matter which one. I might even show you both ways. I have gone ahead and written both of these equations or both of these systems because I am going to show you both ways that you can do this. First, let's look at the one on the left. And let's say that I want to make my x value in the second equation be a +4. Well, if I want to do that, that means I'm going to have to multiply 4 to that whole equation. I'm distributing 4 to each term in that equation. So it would be 4 times x, which is 4x, 4 times -3, which is -12, so -12y, and then equals, and 4 times -6 is -24. Now that you've done that, you can bring down the original first equation, which is -4x plus 9y equals 9. Now that my coefficients of x are opposites, but they have the same number, the same coefficient, I can add these two together. And I have 4x plus -4x, which is 0, so I don't have to write anything down. Then I have -12y plus 9y, which is -3y. And that's equal to -24 plus 9, which is -15. Now I can go ahead and solve for y by dividing each term by -3. So that will leave me with y equals, and -15 divided by -3 is a +5. Now at this time you have a choice. You can take the y equals 5, and now you can go to substitution, and you can substitute the 5 for a y value in one of the equations so that you can solve for x. Or you could continue with elimination. We could just try to eliminate, instead of eliminating the x, we can try to eliminate the y this time. So let's do that. Okay, I'm looking at my -3y, and what can you multiply to -3 to equal a -9? Well, the answer to that would be a +3. So I'm going to multiply this equation by +3. And when I do that, I get 3 times x is 3x. 3 times -3y is -9y. And 3 times -6 is -18. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to bring the original equation down so that I have -4x plus 9y equals to 9. And now I can simply add these two. And I can add them because -9y plus -9y is going to equal 0. So let's do it. 3x plus -4x is -1x. -9y plus 9y is 0. And then -18 plus 9 is -9. Now let's divide each term by -1. And when you do that, I have x equals +9. I do want to check my work, so I'm going to do that in the upper left-hand corner over here in purple. So instead of x minus 3y equals -6, I'm going to substitute the 9 for the x, and that's going to be minus 3 times 5, because 5 is supposed to be my y value, and it should equal -6. I'll put a little question mark. Okay, so I have 9 minus 15. Does that equal -6? And the answer is yes, it does. So we know our solutions are correct. So now we can write them as an ordered pair. 9, 5. That's our solution. Well, I hope this video has helped you on how to understand solving a system of equations by elimination, by eliminating a variable, and I look forward to working with you again. Bye-bye.